Okay. Looks like we got about 15 people on so far. There are a few more that I know are coming, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. How's my mic level? Thumbs up? You can hear me? Oh, Bonnie's nodding her head. Yes. Hey, Bon. Okay. Okay, let's get going. Good evening, everybody. My name is Beth Wells. I am a member of the board of directors of Friends of the Lost Coast. And on behalf of Friends of the Lost Coast and our partners at Bureau of Land Management King Range, I'm happy to welcome you to the third and final installment in our Birds of the Lost Coast virtual lecture series. And tonight, I'm super excited to welcome back Russ Namitz. He's going to teach us all about seabirds of Humboldt County. Welcome, Russ. Great to see you again. And before I forget, I want to let everyone know that our Birding 101 lecture video from a couple of weeks ago should be up on our Friends of the Lost Coast YouTube channel soon, I hope within the next week or so. And we are recording tonight's session, so it'll be up there as well. Stay tuned for that. Okay, I want to just give you a little thumbnail picture of our organization, Friends of the Lost Coast. We're a nonprofit group based in Southern Humboldt. And our mission is to inspire a passion for understanding and preserving the natural life of the Lost Coast region. And to that end, we provide education, youth programs, and opportunities for community members to get out in nature and participate in really fun activities that help preserve our amazing local environment. And actually coming up in the next month, since it's spring, we got a lot of activities happening. I'll run those down really quick. This Saturday, May 22nd from 9 to noon, we'll be joining California State Parks for Sinkyone Wilderness Invasive Plant Removal Day. And I understand that there will also be camping available at Needle Rock. So that's be a fun thing to get out and do. On this Sunday, the 23rd, we're having our rescheduled Shelter Cove Earth Day event. We had to cancel on our actual Earth Day event because it was raining. So we've re-upped and it's happening this Sunday. Got a bunch of little restoration projects going. And if you show up, you can also get free lunch from Cafe Dolce. So that's kind of cool. We have a couple of native plant garden volunteer work parties coming up on June 3rd and June 23rd. Those happen from 9 to noon at our native plant garden out at the BLM offices in Whitethorn. On Memorial Day weekend, we're teaming up with BLM and the King Range Alliance for volunteer trailhead hosting at Black Sands Beach and Atoll Beach. So that'll be fun. Good excuse to get out to the coast for Memorial Day. And finally, on June 27th, we'll be teaming up again with BLM for weeding and general tidying up at the trailhead area at Black Sands Beach. So you can visit our website, lostcoast.org. That's www.lostcoast.org to get details about these activities, to learn about our programs, to find out how to volunteer. And while you're there, you could also make a tax-deductible donation to support our work. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can keep up with us there. So a couple of housekeeping items here. I've got you all on mute, and that's just basically to eliminate background noise. And if you want, and if you don't mind, you could also just turn off your cameras, and then we don't have distracting visuals either. The chat box is on, you can see that. And after Russ does his presentation, he'll be taking questions through the chat box. So as we're going along, you can put your questions in there as you think of them, and he'll get to them at the end. We are recording this session, and as I said, it'll be up on our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. And with that, I'm really happy to introduce our speaker and tell you a little bit about him. Russ Namitz was born and raised in Lincoln City, Oregon. At age 9, he was captivated by the furtive Pacific Northwest denizen of the dank woods, the varied thrush. With a few stepping stones along the way, Russ began actively birding the summer after graduating from Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. His first of many seasonal biology jobs was searching for nesting northern goshawks in the Okanagan National Forest in Washington. Russ is a pelagic bird guide for Oregon Pelagic Tours and has surveyed for spotted owls for over 12 seasons. he has birded extensively around the world, concentrating in the Americas. And Russ, again, welcome back. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. And I know seabirds are kind of a specialty of yours. I'm going to go ahead and do the Zoom magic here so that you can, there we go, share your screen.
Okay, well, thank you, Beth. Thank you for that introduction. And yeah, I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing a Seabird Protection Network t-shirt, just especially for this presentation. And yeah, I almost didn't make it back tonight through that road construction there at Last Chance Grade. So I'm happy that I did. I went up to Oregon today, chasing a rare bird in Oregon, took the day off of work. I'm allowed to, kind of flex my schedule like that. So that's nice. But unfortunately I didn't see it, but it was Oregon's first record of a black vulture. So it was photographed last night, and who knows where it's gone. But anyways, we're here to talk about seabirds. So let me share the screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Seabirds of the Lost Coast, specifically Humboldt County. And again, my name is Russ Namitz, and I work for the Bureau of Land Management here locally in the Arcata Field Office. This is a black-footed albatross. It is truly a pelagic seabird, and it has a magnificent grace and presence over the ocean, 7-foot wingspan. So just getting into it, what makes a seabird a seabird? But basically, it's a bird that spends most of its life in a marine environment. And that can be broken down into nearshore species, or it could be pelagic or truly ocean-going or seafaring species. Here we see a Buller's shearwater, and this is truly a pelagic species. You don't see these birds from land. You have to go out into in the ocean to see where they're feeding off the continental shelf, at least on the coast of North America, that is. So seabirds are typically long-lived species. They have a high site and mate fidelity, which means that they come to the same site to nest, often the same nest bowl year after year, and they mate. They're highly monogamous, and they have longtime partners, which also means that they have low reproductive rates, which you can see that this Laysan Albatross only lays one egg and only rears one chick, and it takes a long time to rear that chick. So it's a different sort of reproductive strategy that these birds exhibit. Okay. So this particular Laysan Albatross, some of you may know about her. She is named Wisdom. She nests on the Midway Atoll in Hawaii, and they banded her as an adult. And since it takes Laysan albatrosses about 5 years to reach adult plumage, they knew that she was at least 5 years for that breeding age. And she's been banded for 65 years now. So we think that she's at least 70 years old, which is just a fabulous accomplishment. And she's still breeding and laying eggs at that age, which is also remarkable. Seabirds come ashore only they only come to land to nest. True pelagic birds like these albatross and these shearwaters, they come ashore to nest, and so they're only on the land for maybe 4 months out of the year, and the other 8 months they are over the ocean, over the water. Most of them are breeding on islands, which means that when they go out to feed, they are thousands of miles from the continental mainland, whether it's North America or South America or Australia, etc. So Typically, they'll form dense colonies. Usually, they'll space themselves out just out of pecking distance from each other. Something that's pretty interesting about seabirds is they have these nasal salt glands. So seabirds only drink seawater. They don't drink fresh water, and they eat seafood, which also has a lot of salt in it. So their blood is really salty, and they need a way to expel that salt. And so essentially, depending on the type of species, they will forcibly eject, almost like blowing their nose through their nostril, or it'll just be a constant drip. So the blood will come up over the head, pass through these salt glands, and the salt will be pulled out of the bloodstream, and then it'll drip in this concentrated saline solution out the nostrils. So I'm just moving my video around so that I can see any writing there. So as you can see from that northern fulmar photo, that looks like water dripping off the bill, but it is that saline solution. Their bills are constantly, dripping out that saline solution. So just a little more about the physiology. You can see that there's that there's a countercurrent. Let's start here on the right-hand side. So the blood flow is going in one direction, and that salt is being pulled out by the cells of the salt gland, and then it pulls it into another tube that has that saline or salt secretion, and that goes down to the central duct and then out into the nostril. So, okay, seabird adaptations. Here we see two photos of a Brandts Cormorant. So they have webbed feet, which really helps them to swim quickly underwater. These particular birds, the cormorants, have these long necks, and they will kind of cock it back in almost like you are spear fishing, and you have it like cocked in like a rubber band, and then that neck shoots forward through the water and grabs a fish, almost like a heron or egret would do on land to get a fish out of a pool. Some birds don't use their feet to swim, they use their wings to swim. So members of the Puffin family, the common murre, the tufted puffin, they will fly underwater to catch their prey. Penguins do this as well, but penguins are a really old group of bird species. Obviously, they're in the southern hemisphere, so not going to be found off Humboldt County. Some other adaptations is they have these very long, narrow wings. Think of some of those paper airplanes you used to make as a kid, and you had to throw them very fast, and they would go a long distance, but you had to throw them very fast. And that kind of is the same principle with these seabirds. They have long, narrow wings, so they need a lot of wind, wind that gets generated from what's called dynamic soaring. So the wind goes under the wings, and it produces lift and allows them to stay up above the water. So here you see a flesh-footed shearwater on the left. Shearwater, you can see it's appropriately named because these birds fly really close, sometimes even dipping the first or two flight feathers into the water. They're so close when they bank. And then of course we have the endangered short-tailed albatross, which breeds on Japan. Once in a while, we'll see it in waters off of our west coast. The eye shape. So birds have what's called a nictating membrane, and they can flap, sort of like reptiles. They can move that nictating membrane over the eye so that they can see underwater. They can also change the shape of their lens according to the medium. So when they're in the water medium, that lens shape changes, and so things become sharp and clear. I don't know if you've ever tried to look underwater, but not only does it hurt, but it's really fuzzy because our eyes are geared towards seeing in air. So some of the ways that these birds hunt is some of them are scavenge off the surface. Some of them plunge dive, shallow plunge dive. Some of them deep plunge dive. Some of them go ahead and dive, and then they will pursue underwater with their wings. There's kleptoparasitism with birds stealing food from other birds, and that's what they specialize in flight, and then just picking things off the surface. So we have a lot of, I put Trinidad Seabirds on here because there's a number of breeding seabird colonies off of the big rocks off Trinidad. And we have immense colonies of common murres up there. Flatiron Rock has about 60,000 common murres. Green Rock has about 40,000. So just those two rocks alone have almost 100,000 common murres. You can see they have this very neat turquoise shaped egg, shaped like a pear, so that it doesn't roll off the rock as easily. One side of the egg is much smaller, and so that it tends to just roll in a circle if it gets bumped or nudged. Also in the Puffin family is the guillemots. So we have a pigeon guillemot. It's all black with white wings. Something that's unique about this species is it loses all of that black plumage and turns white and gray for the winter season. Black oystercatcher is a type of shorebird. It's essentially a large sandpiper that breeds on the rocks. Then we have 3 species of cormorants. Cormorants we've talked about, they're long, snake-like necks, and they feed on fish. So we have the double-crested, which is pretty ubiquitous across the US. They'll be found inland in Michigan at the Great Lakes, Utah, etc. And then we have the Brandts Cormorant and the Pelagic Cormorant. And those two are strictly coastal, strictly on the West Coast. They don't go inland. You're not going to find them in Garberville or the Central Valley of California. You will find them on the coast, and that's it. So unfortunately, the Pelagic Cormorant did not get the its namesake. It's not pelagic at all. It just is coastal. So and then of course we have our resident seagull, which is first name is Western, so Western gull. It's the only species of gull that nests in Humboldt County, on the coast, I should say. I'll rephrase that. It's the only coastal nesting species of gull. So for Western gull, as you can see with the scientific name, occidentalis means Western, so it's appropriately named there. It's dark gray, dark black wingtips. These are the folded wingtips, the black with the white spots going behind the bird. Those are its folded wingtips. And then this bird has pink legs, and pink-legged gulls tend to be large 4-year gulls, meaning they reach adult plumage, and it takes them 4 years to do that. And something interesting you may already know is that red spot at the base of the bill, it serves as a beacon for chicks to peck. And when chicks peck that red spot on the bill, then they regurgitate the meal, the adults do, and feed it to the chicks. Double-crested cormorants have a very limited season where they actually have the double crest. It's at peak breeding season, and they're so named with the crests that come from behind the eye. I don't know if you can see my cursor. It comes from behind the eye on the top of the head. And then these other pictures don't show the crest. So you can see that there's a very scaled appearance on the double-crested cormorants, and they always have orange on them, whether they're young. So these birds on the right are young, and they have much paler chests, and these birds in the middle and these birds on the left are adults, and they're black and orange facial skin and what's called a gular pouch. Here we have the Brandts Cormorant, and at all ages and all seasons, they will have a cream-colored throat patch. And so this is a winter plumaged and younger bird on the far right. You don't see any blue on the throat. You just see that cream-colored throat patch. And then the middle and then the left birds at high breeding season, they will have those really cobalt blue gular pouches with the cream-colored throat patch. And Brandts Cormorants and double-crested are about the same size. They are the large cormorants. A Pelagic Cormorant is a bit smaller, a bit slimmer. You can see that it has a slim head. The head is almost as about the same width as the neck. It doesn't have a big blocky head, and then it has that red, bright red facial skin. But what you're going to notice on the Pelagic Cormorants is they have white flanks, and at breeding season, you will see that a long distance away, and it's a fairly straightforward identification. So here's some comparisons of them together. Here in the center, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in the center, remember I said the cream colored throat pouch. You can see a cream colored throat pouch on two of these birds. Those are Brandts Cormorants. And then the two birds that are on either side, thin heads and pencil thin necks, those are the Pelagic Cormorants. And then the right-hand picture, we have that obvious orange facial skin for the Doublecrested Cormorant, big blocky head. And then the Pelagic Cormorant sitting next to it has a thin head and it's all dark. Brown pelicans, there we see that name again, occidentalis for Western hemisphere anyway. This is a threatened species. These birds breed down in Baja, Mexico. And after they finish with their breeding, they will move north to take advantage of the cold upwelling that we get during the late summer. The first birds to arrive, they've already arrived actually, are the immatures or the non-breeding birds. And then will come the failed breeders who either didn't find a mate or had a nest that failed. And then they'll come the adults that have already sort of reared the kids, ship them off to the college, and then they come north to feed. So these, just a note about the brown pelicans, these pelicans are plunge divers. So they will circle like air fighter jets above the water, and then they will plunge dive. Oftentimes they will do this in unison. If there's a big school of fish, you'll see 10, 15, 20 birds going into the water, just and they're feeding this over the school of fish. In contrast, you'll see American white pelicans that are inland, and they're on big freshwater lakes and reservoirs, and they just paddle like a duck on the top of the water, and they just kind of scoop things up with their bill right off the surface of the water. And they might dabble and kind of tip their butt up a little bit to try to get deeper, but they don't fly up high and plunge dive. It's a different feeding strategy for these two different types of pelicans. And as you could imagine, white pelicans, the American white pelicans, are really quite rare on the coast, so we shouldn't see those. It would be a big deal if they were over here on the coast. One of our most common resident shorebirds on our rocky coastline, and you can see these all over Shelter Cove, nesting on the rocks there. They're black oystercatchers. They're very vociferous and loud, and they're very gregarious in the wintertime, and they'll have these big flocks of 15 to 30 birds sometimes. But when they are nesting, they can be very cryptic. They'll tuck that orange bill in under their wing so you can't see it, or predators can't see it. And all you're left with is a brownish dark body over a brownish dark rock. And they blend in very well. A bird that we all love and would all hope to see is the tufted puffin. I put this in here even though we used to have breeding puffins in Humboldt County. They've been extirpated locally. Once in a while, we'll see a bird fly south on its way to the Farallones. They breed to the north of us in Oregon, but their numbers are declining. We're not sure exactly why. But they have this huge laterally compressed. It's like somebody took their bill and just squeezed it, and so it's laterally compressed up and down. And then it's serrated, so it's like little jagged, like a serrated knife that you cut bread with, and they can hold multiple individuals of fish, and so they'll have a mouthful of fish, sometimes 8 to 10 fish in the bill, and they have that serrated edge holding them all in place, and then they will fly back to the burrow and feed their young like that. They live in burrows, so they need a rock that has a soil substrate, and so they can dig a burrow that's 4 to 8 feet deep. And so typically they're up on the tops of the rocks. Subsequently, they will lose that yellow kind of feather tuft on either side. They'll lose that white face during the wintertime, and the bill will slough off. It's made of that keratin, like your fingernails, and the outer scales will slough off. It'll be half that size. So it's energetically expensive to look this pretty. So they will undergo a transformation and save energy during the winter times when food is not quite as plentiful. Here we have the common murre that we've already talked about. We've got over 100,000 birds just in Trinidad alone. Kind of the closest birds to Shelter Cove and the Lost Coast are probably down at Cape Viscano. There's a rather large colony down there. There you can see the piriform, or the pear-shaped egg. It's more narrow on the top end, like I said, and so it will spin in a circle, an adaptation for nesting on ledges and not having your eggs fall off. So as its namesake, this bird is fairly plentiful and common on both coasts. So I wanted to just give you an idea. I know this is Lost Coast, but we'll put this up for where these birds are in big colonies if you wanted to see them. White rock, green rock, flat iron, blank, and pilot. So flat iron and green are those two rocks that I spoke of, with the 60,000 and the 40,000. So you can go to a nice walk on Elk Head if you're up there, or Trinidad Head proper, and look at it and see these birds. The pigeon guillemot, like I mentioned, is really cool. It's all black, starkingly black, has these white wing patches. And then its mouth lining is as vibrant as its feet. And they're constantly chattering. And so you get a look at that mouth lining as well. Again, they will change plumage and be all whitish gray come winter season. Again, it's energetically expensive to have this sexy attire. So they retire it and save energy. So here we have the Rhinoceros auklet, again in the Puffin family, almost as big as a Puffin. Rhinoceros, of course, for that horny protuberance. It's made of keratin, just like the bill, and it kind of sticks up. Then it has those facial plumes. Again, the function is to look sexy and attract a mate. And then during the non-breeding season, those feather tufts will be replaced, and the horn will disappear, and then it'll go through its breeding cycle. These birds, again, swim underwater using their wings, feeding on fish, as you can see. And yeah, they also need crevices and burrows to nest in. So they need some soil substrate on the top of the rocks. Marblemurrelet, we should all be familiar with, a threatened species down here on the lower 48. I put them in their marbled plumage or their brown summertime plumage. Really unique and really fun ecology of this bird is they will be fishing in the ocean, and then they will be flying a single fish inland, and they will do that multiple times a day to feed the chick. And this is a rather small bird, you know, but it is wide enough that it needs a substantial branch to nest on. And so you need a branch that's wider than the bird, and it sits down on the branch. Usually it's moss covered, and kind of scoots around and makes a shallow depression, lays the egg, and then you know, the pairs take turns, and they vocalize to each other. And if you've ever heard or know somebody who's done a Marblemurrelet survey, they're in the woods, usually miles from the coast, and they're there before dawn, and they're just listening and looking for these birds calling over the tops of the trees, and they follow the water courses up into the drainage to their nestry. There's two main training sites for the West Coast for Marblemurrelet surveyors, and one of them is here in Humboldt County. It's Prairie Creek State Park, and the other is up in Olympia at the Olympic National Park. Those are the two main training sites that Marblemurrelet surveyors go to get certified and trained. So, okay, so let's just talk about seabirds and why do we pay attention to seabirds? They can teach us about fish stocks because most of these seabirds eat fish. Some of them eat smaller things like amphipods and copepods and the small crustacean krill-like organisms. But a lot of these larger ones will eat fish. They can teach us about changing marine conditions, where if the fish are further offshore or if the fish are just not there, if something's happening with the food source, then these birds themselves will not nest and reproduce. And that's something to pay attention to, clues to the environment. And some of these birds will segregate themselves on the rock. So you'll have pigeon guillemots that are nesting really low on the rock. The pelagic cormorants are fairly low on the rock. The common murres are on the top. The puffins, the species that need soil, are on the top. So if you're getting sea level rise, then you might have some of these species that utilize the bottom of the rocks having trouble and not nesting or not reproducing, and that can kind of be an indication that the environment is changing. Some of the impacts to seabirds, we've had a history with egg harvesting, gill nets, long lining, pollution, oil spills, and human disturbance to seabirds. So it used to be, a common murre, like I said, is common, and it used to be much more common. People would collect their eggs and they nest right on the coastline, and they were an important food source. The gill netting, unfortunately, to catch the fish, sometimes the birds that were after the fish would get entangled in the nets. Thankfully, that is only happening in some select places, even though it does continue. Long lining, you probably heard of as an impact, where if you bait the hook and then you flip it out, and then these birds can dive down to the water and grab onto the fish, and then unfortunately get hooked, and then they drown because the line goes down. So there are things now in place where they have flags and ribbons off the back of boats that will scare the birds away, so that they don't get close enough to grab onto the bait, and they'll miss the hook. So there's things in place to try and stop those things. Oil spills, we had in the late 90s. That's kind of why I am working for the Bureau of Land Management, is from oil spill money. In the late 90s, we had 2 big tankers that went down at the mouth of Humboldt Bay, and we had some restoration funds to study the seabirds and the effects that's happening on them. Human disturbance, whether it's a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter that flies too low, whether it's drones, whether it's fishermen or recreational kayaks, all these things can take a toll on seabirds. So it's important to be mindful. And here's just an indirect way of what could happen. So this was a drone that got flown over a seabird colony. The birds kind of reacted to it, and they didn't necessarily flush, but they moved away from their eggs, and it exposed the eggs. And then a predator like a raven, or in this case, a western gull, came in and ate the eggs. And that was human caused. And so we're also in my job doing a little bit of education about how you can reduce the human caused disturbance. And you can see how densely packed in these common murres are. So from that oil restoration fund, it sprung the North Coast Seabird Protection Network, and it was spearheaded in 2016. I've been in this project for a couple of years. Again, we talked about the oil spills, and they moved north into Trinidad, where there's a lot of common murres. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but basically we know the biology or what happens when oil saturates the feathers, then water can penetrate to the skin, which causes hypothermia. So these birds aren't really waterproof in the strictest sense, but they have oil gland that they will put over their feathers, and then their feathers are so dense as well that it repels water, and then it keeps water from touching the skin. And then this when they get oiled like this, then that prevents that from happening. So that's a problem. Yeah, so I've already talked about the human disturbance monitoring and the education, the outreach, and so it's a coordinated management that BLM and the North Coast Seabird Protection Network and nonprofit groups like yourself and local land trusts and California Fish and Game and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, et cetera, are all concerned about the California Coastal National Monument and the birds that utilize and nest on those offshore sea stacks. So, you know, it's an interesting phenomenon where the U.S. Coast Guard needs to train to be efficient, but where they train is often where seabirds nest. And so, you know, we every year we talk with the Coast Guard and try to get them to do things and move it around the nesting season if they can, or go to rocks that don't have big nesting colonies. We educate the kayaking companies to not get as close to the rocks to make birds flush. You know, people want you know, a guidance as to how close is too close. And, you know, I always say, if an animal is looking at you, then it's aware. And if you push that boundary, then they're going to react. And so some animals are more comfortable than others, and can tolerate a little more disturbance, and some do not. So, and so here's all the partners for the North Coast Seabird Protection Network. And I thank you all for your attention and for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions on local species or anything like that. So I'm going to stop share, I think. I might hand it over to maybe, I see Beth has not unmuted herself. I'm not sure if I need to do that. Okay, I'm just gonna, Beth's not there, so I'm just gonna go right into the questions. So let's see, from Pat. Pat said, did you mean 4 to 8 inches, not feet, dug dirt nest for a tufted puffin? No, I did not. It's 4 to 8 feet of dirt that those puffins will tunnel into. A puffin itself is almost a foot long, so that's almost 12 inches. And so it's going to need a substantial distance into the tunnel, into that burrow. Okay, feel free to type your questions in here. William, I've watched several documentaries where it shows dolphins and fish herding a school of fish until it becomes compacted and very easy to eat. Seabirds then dive in to eat the fish. Why aren't any of the seabirds also getting eaten? Seems like they would be fair game, no pun intended. Would a dolphin with an empty stomach eat a seagull? Yes, certainly. But you know, a lot of what a bird is made of are feathers. So if you stripped down at all the bones of a bird and all of the feathers of a bird, the feathers weigh more than the bones of a bird because those bones are hollow. It's an adaptation for flying. So there are things that eat birds, specifically tiger sharks, but all that feather is there's no nutrients there. It's just all like eating a bunch of fingernails. It's really very not nutritious. So seabirds are not high on the menu of dolphins or many species like that. So okay, Pat. That kind of wraps up the questions. One new message. Great job, thanks. Saw oyster catchers in probably the Faroe. I'm not sure about the spelling of that. I'm not sure where that is. Faroe, where they are the national bird. They were often way up the slopes from the water on grassy fields. Could they be nesting there? North Atlantic. Okay. It's a different species of oyster catcher. And there's about maybe 10 species of oystercatchers in the world. We have the black oystercatcher. There's a blackish oystercatcher, which is in South America. And then we also have the American oystercatcher, and typically that's a East Coast species. Anyway, the different oystercatchers will utilize different habitats. Our black oystercatcher is really a rocky shoreline and it uses those rocks to nest. So what are the factors underlying driving population decreases of brown pelicans? Well, it had to do with DDT, getting into the water system and then concentrating into the fish, and then the brown pelicans would eat the fish. You saw that with bald eagles, who are primarily a fish eater as well. And so, and the ospreys, fish eater as well. So you had DDTs in the water system back in the 1970s when they finally banned it. So that was really what led to the brown pelican being listed as on the endangered species list. I see vultures down at the water in Shelter Cove. Seems strange to me. Well, in April, every April, the harbor seals give birth to their pups, and they have a fair amount of afterbirth outside of the pups. And so the scavengers are down there utilizing that. It's a consistent thing that happens every April. April is the main month. So you have common ravens and bald eagles even, and turkey vultures all down there. And then vultures will also, I mean, historically vultures scavenge along the coast because whales are washed ashore, dead fish, other marine mammals, etc. And I mean, even condors, utilize the coast, and that was kind of one of their primary reasons, the condors, for being there were whales would wash ashore. So, and then of course marine mammals like a healthy sea lion or
You're froze up. Well, looks like we lost Russ there for a second. Give him a second to come back on here. Russ, we lost your audio and your video.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Well, I could hear you for a second. Okay, there you are. There's your video's back up. You just need to, or maybe I need to unmute you. Do I need to do that? Let's see here. You must be down there. There we go. Okay. There we go. No? Huh.
How about now?
There you go. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I was mentioning that godwits I wouldn't class as seabirds, even though I threw in the black oystercatcher just because we see them on, that's their breeding ecology, is breeding on the coast. But yes, the answer is godwits come to Humboldt Bay every year, and they winter by the hundreds, and it is amazing. Humboldt Bay is one of those wintering grounds for many species of shorebirds, and it's also a stopover place. And so birds, as they migrate both north and south, they need places to, kind of like your Taco Bell or whatever, your Whole Foods grocery store or whatever. You have to swing in, you have to refuel and rest for a little bit, and then you keep on going. And that's what these birds do in Humboldt Bay. So just a quick side note is the shorebirds at Humboldt Bay also need a place to rest at high tide. So if the entire bay was lined with houses, that would be a problem. These birds wouldn't have anywhere to go. Then they go to the beach. Then people are driving on the beach, or dogs are running, etc. So it's great that we have some wild and some inaccessible places to let these birds rest. So when was the last time a puffin was seen in Humboldt County? Puffins are seen probably almost annually flying by. I saw a puffin last year during one of my seabird surveys. I was out at Trinidad, one flew by. But I don't, the last time a puffin was seen nesting, maybe is a more appropriate, is maybe the question. And that's been about at least 10 years ago. And I was on Green Rock, just north of Trinidad. So, okay, there's my scientific name for the I'll look that up later. That Oystercatcher that Sherman brought forward. Thank you, Sherman. Thank you. Welcome. Everybody's you're welcome. Oh, okay. There you go. So yeah, I think I got through the questions, Beth.
All right. That's great. Thank you so much, Russ. This learned a lot. Next time I'm out at Shelter Cove, maybe we'll know a little bit more about what I'm looking at. We are going to, as I said, be able to post the recorded session here on our YouTube channel. So keep a watch on our website and our social media pages for that link. And then we can all refresh our memories about these seabirds before our next trip out to the water to look at them. Thank you, Russ, so much for the presentation.
You're welcome. Hey, Beth, I don't know if folks are doing this on purpose, but I've noticed like 3 hands come up.
Oh.
And now they're down. So it could be a mistake.
Yeah, I didn't actually have the little hand up thing enabled. So
a mistake. Okay, Jules okay. Raised the hand and now the hand is down, and it gave a thumbs up like maybe it was a mistake.
Okay. But I'll just say last call for questions. If anyone has a question, here's your last call to put it in the chat box. Otherwise, looks like we will go ahead and bid you all a good evening. Thanks for attending tonight, and remember to visit lostcoast.org to get information on our programs. And also we might be doing some more virtual lectures like this. This was our first go round with this. We've always done them in person before, and we'll get back to that one of these days. But if you liked these virtual lectures, go ahead and shoot us a message on our Facebook page or through our website and let us know. And let us know what topics you'd like to see for future lectures. Okay, and with that, Russ, thank you again. And everybody, good birding.
Bye,
good night.